testing is a wide category. Not all testing is for human cosmetics or medicines. Testing also includes surgeries, as well as things such as yard care products, pesticides, and foods for humans and animals, which is why we say that not all animal testing should be banned in the United States. First, I'm going to start out with rebuttal and then move into my own arguments, which will be that there are tangible benefits to animals that are gained from animal testing. The second of which is going to be that testing is inevitable, and we need to make sure we do so in an ethical fashion towards all beings, especially towards humans, which is the race that we ourselves are a part of. But first, rebuttal. First of all, they don't offer you any, or she does not offer you any definitions whatsoever. This means that banning all animal testing includes testing on animals that is solely focused on animal products. Now, so we think that this is especially visible when we're talking about dog foods, when we're talking about chemotherapy drugs for dogs, for all animals, not just dogs. But it's also the benefit that arises from this when the entirety of dogs from testing, let's say, chemotherapy drugs or tumor removal surgeries on a small sections of dogs is a huge advantage, and the number of dogs' lives that will be saved completely outweighs the number of dogs tested on. This is an automatic neg vote when they don't provide you any definitions to limit what testing means, because we see that there are times when testing is good and necessary to the continuance not only of humans but also of animals. So the second point of rebuttal is that the entirety of my opponent's speech rests on the premise that it is unethical to cause pain to animals. This is, we agree with this, it's probably unethical to cause pain to animals, but this is not an argument against testing in general. It's an argument for better regulation and practices that focus on reducing pain and not banning all animal testing. We think that if the Animal Welfare Act is specifically modulated to include rats and mice, and if it specifically looks at how animals are tested and treated, that all of her arguments disappear, especially considering the fact that according to the USDA, under the Animal Welfare Act, 61% of animals tested suffer from no pain during those tests. Not all tests are about causing pain or suffering to animals. A lot of them are very peaceful and they don't cause any pain to their subjects at all. This is another automatic neg vote because it is completely ignored in her speech, and this is a case where testing, especially in her paradigm, is still a good thing. Okay, so the third area of rebuttal is the efficacy of alternatives, and it may be true that medicines and products don't need to be tested on animals, and that the tests on animals are not as effective in producing results as tests on humans themselves. But this is one example of testing and not all-inclusive, meaning this ignores testing for surgeries, which practice and aid, and actually having this organism to practice on is a very tangible benefit that can only be gained via another body, not just from a test tube and not just from skin that is reproduced or made new for testing. Okay, so let's move on to our constructive material here. The first one is that there are tangible benefits to animals, and I've talked about this a little bit. So we think that A, testing products such as lawn chemicals on animals in labs prevents hundreds of animals from dying when one family uses toxic chemicals on their yard. We can see this quite clearly in any kind of fertilizer or any kind of weed removal, that if we have not tested it on animals in labs, hundreds of animals, every animal in a neighborhood is likely to get sick or die or experience pain that we have forced onto them because we did not test a couple of animals in labs. We think that if we're looking at the idea of pain, this is an automatic neg ballot as well, because this is a situation in which testing prevents the pain of unknowing animals. So also, though, we see that 10% of animal testing is solely based on products that are exclusively for animals. And this is another automatic neg ballot because without any kind of definitions, we have to take into account that these 10% of testing is requisite and necessary to be able to ethically treat animals. Okay, so the second point is that testing is inevitable, and it's just really a question of who is tested on. So if animals aren't used, then humans will be. But it's not just that people are going to be volunteering for this. It's not that simple. We see that it's only going to be, it's primarily going to be focused on those people who need money and who are willing to take any risk for a couple of dollars, or that it's going to be focused on using prisoners who need to pay back their debt to society. And in either of these cases, we see it's institutionalized racism that creates a world where we test the poor for the benefit of and the betterment of the rich. And ultimately, despite whatever our ethical obligations are to being outside our species, we need to first make sure that we treat the beings in our own species ethically first, and that the ethical treatment of humans outweighs in this scenario. That is why we say we should not ban all animal testing, because animals are benefited in the long run, and we need to treat humans ethically before we can move on and treat other species at the same ethical standard.